Welcome to the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. You're listening to a new Redefining Cybersecurity podcast with Sean Martin. Have you ever thought that we're selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Well, perhaps we are. Let's look at how we can organize a successful information security program that integrates business culture with people, process, and technology to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity here on the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. This is Sean Martin, your host, where I get to talk about all kinds of cool things related to protecting the business and helping it hopefully generate revenue, not just protect the revenue that they create. And I truly believe as security professionals, we have a role to play in helping the business define itself to operate accurately, functionally proper, if you will, in the industries within which they play. So today, it's a topic that I absolutely love. Many people probably think I'm crazy for loving risk management, but that's the topic. We're going to look at the broader GRC space today, and I'm thrilled to have good friend on again. We met a number of years ago. We've had a few conversations. John Sapp, it's a pleasure to have you on the show again.
Sean, thank you. It's always a pleasure to join you. And we've had a lot of great conversations over the years and looking forward to having another one.
Absolutely. And it seems, and we'll get into kind of your journey a bit, but it seems a lot of our conversations have been rooted in risk and connected to insurance in some fashion, be it health insurance early days or just general insurance in early days, and then cyber insurance at some point as well. Yeah,
you know, it makes me think about September 2008. Not that I remember it exactly, but there was an episode or an article in Information Security magazine back then, and it was on GRC, and actually I got it posted up on the wall back there behind me, the copy of the article. And we were talking about GRC, and that was during the heyday of GRC and ITGRC and EGRC. And so what I want to do today in today's conversation is I've trademarked a phrase that we are turning GRC around. So when you think about the letters GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, I have a different view of it today, which everyone is talking about it, but it's cyber risk governance. So when you turn GRC around those letters, you get CRG, and that is cyber risk governance. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
You've made your own Rubik's Cube of risk management there, John. I love it. I love it. Well, for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting and hearing who you are, maybe a few words about some of the things you've done in the past. I don't know if you want to tie that article in, what prompted that article, and some of the things you've done kind of leading up to today. I think that'd be super helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. So back in 2006, I was at McKesson, and after about 15 years of doing application development, realized I needed to transition my career, and had the opportunity of working with at McKesson. They were establishing an IT risk management function. And so that became where I transitioned into, took the CISSP and also acquired the CGIT, the Certified in Governance of Enterprise IT, and C-Risk, and a few other certifications to establish some level of credibility, if you will, to enter the space. And actually in 2008, as we were building that organization out, had the opportunity to pick my title. And at that time, I recall Apple having advertised for a senior GRC consultant. So I included the GRC in my title and was tagged a senior consultant of governance, risk, and compliance at McKesson at that time, and that led to an article as we were implementing IT GRC capabilities in the organization, and my career has continued to evolve from there, getting more into roles that you mentioned at the top of the podcast that hopefully security could generate revenue instead of just protect it. And that's actually one of the things that me and my team did, is we converted our cost center into a profit center at McKesson, because we were able to take technologies like encryption and DLP and other things, because you had HIPAA had become very, very prevalent at the time, and folks were trying to figure out at some of the smaller practices and organizations, how do they do that? So we turned around and took the capabilities that we had implemented and turned it into a product that could be included with an order of their software and services. So I've continued to evolve that into a few different CISO roles at medical device companies and financial services, and now again back into financial services. Had a stint in retail along the way, but so right now CISO here at Texas Mutual Insurance Company, where I've worked to build out the program and evolve it, and really pursue one of the organization's top priorities, and that is improving our security posture.
I love that, John, and I think what I want to touch on here is because you've had, and we're going to get into the topic in more detail, driven by an event that you spoke at, but you've been in a number of different industries, and I'm curious if different types of organizations do or should or shouldn't approach risk from a different perspective. Insurance, financial services, retail, healthcare, device builders. Clearly, they all have different things they worry about, but I'm wondering, does that mean they have to approach risk differently as well?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I love having a discussion around. And I think the answer is they should. The approach is the same, although the data elements are different, because it will produce information that will drive the risk-based decision. And that's the key to me, is that it's all about the collection, aggregation, correlation, deduplication, normalization, prioritization, and visualization of that information in order to make that risk-based decision. And I know
all the Seans I heard.
Yeah, see, you're always at the top of my mind, Sean. And
That's right.
But when you think about it, it's a problem that needs data to solve it, and it's how you structure and organize that data will be the key to what decision needs to be made. And we've touched on over the course of some of our conversations about this new SEC governance requirement for reporting cyber risk, how cyber risk is being managed, cyber risk governance, materiality of incidents, and so that investors and the like have visibility into what's happening in an organization. And I look at it this way: CISOs, we don't make the decision about materiality. That's the number one thing I would say to a CISO, is don't think that you own the responsibility for making a determination about materiality. That belongs to the chief risk officer, to the general counsel's office, to the CEO. And it's all about providing information. From the security standpoint, we are providers of that information, because we deploy a variety of security technologies to gather data to help us detect an attack and to prevent an attack, or to protect us against an attack if one is successful. So It is about how effective and efficient are we at doing that, and taking that information and putting it into a language that has business risk context for the folks, I say, up, down, and across. So up to the C-level and the board of directors, so that they can understand it, because what you want to do is be able to paint the picture about the effectiveness and efficiency of your cyber risk management activities in financial terms, because that's what they absolutely understand, no translation needed. But then you think about down to, and that's helping them understand the risk and impact to the business if an attack is successful. So they can make decisions about the investments that we're asking for from a CISO perspective, and it helps to justify those investments. But then you think about when you say, okay, well, down, what do we mean by down? Well, it's down to the operational and technical level, the folks that are responsible for identifying, detecting, and remediating those vulnerabilities or the misconfigurations or the things that could be the entry point for an attack. And then across, that is that middle layer where you have management both from the IT functions as well as the business functions, and providing a level of visibility that helps them understand, are the people down at the operational technical level working on the right things based on priority and those risk-based decisions that are being made at a management level or at an executive level, and making sure that everyone's on the same page. And that's the elusive alignment that we've been pursuing for forever, it seems like.
So because I'm going to get to the presentation that you made at Planet Cybersec, and so it was all around cyber risk governance. You've changed the order there, I noticed. Yeah. And the first thing that you, or one of the key takeaways it says, is defining what that is. And I'm wondering, by changing the letters, do we have to then redefine what we're looking at? Because you just talked about having a common view and everybody being on the same page. To me, that starts with understanding, well, what is it we're trying to tackle? So that definition. So yeah. Do we need to redefine it? And if so, how do you define it?
Well, I don't know that we're redefining GRC, but what we are doing is bringing clarity and definition to cyber risk governance and what it is. How does it roll up into a GRC program? Because unfortunately, what a lot of folks think about when you say GRC, and I get calls all the time and emails from vendors, asking, hey, do you have a GRC platform? Well, GRC is not about a platform. The tool is just a mechanism to achieve the outcomes and the values that you're in pursuit of. So what we're doing is we're defining those outcomes, we're defining that value, and then we're identifying how we're going to achieve it and developing it. And it's really taking more of a product management approach to it and building a program using a product management methodology to it. So you have your MVP, that minimum viable product, is a capability that allows me to understand what are the areas of risk what are the areas of the business that are at risk to a cyber attack. And cyber risk governance and cyber risk management is a component of cyber risk governance that is part of your broader enterprise governance, risk and compliance, or your enterprise risk management function. And so, we have an ERM function here, and I've been members of ERM functions at a number of different organizations. And, the CISO generally owns the responsibility of reporting risk as relates to cyber, but also the risk, the IT risk. Even though we often report to the CIO can't define it, and we are best suited and situated to be able to provide the information to frame up that risk. And while the CIO owns IT risk, it's making them aware of what that IT risk is. And in today's world, it's a digital world. There is no turning back, right? Everything we do, as much as we were 5 to 7 years ago talking about the move to the cloud and do you do it, do you not do it? People going to the cloud and then reverting back to on-prem. Well, now it's, SaaS has taken over the world, and, the majority of organizations, SaaS solutions are are what drive their business, or what are, when you look at it, I think there was some Gartner research that says that 60% of an organization's employee uses 42 different SaaS solutions. And so there is risk associated with that. But it is defining it so that we can align with, from a executive level, CIO owns IT risk, make sure that they see the picture from their perspective and what impact a disruption in the IT systems would have on the business. CFO owns financial risk, making sure they understand that what those risks are in the other areas that could produce financial risk and impact the company. Same for COO and operational risk, general counsel for legal and compliance risk and things along that line. So it is, I think it's establishing an explicit definition of what is cyber risk, how do we govern it, and governance is about visibility to manage the risk that we've identified and that we are prioritizing and presenting for a risk-based decision.
Yeah, visibility and authenticity as well. I want to, integrity, I'm sure is in there as well. I want to pick on this a little bit. You piqued my interest with this whole notion of building a product, because what I hear when I talk to folks is that programs are generally driven by compliance or some event, or they recognize the need, so they turn to a vendor, right, who presumably has the problem solved through their tool, so they just adopt the tool and try to cram it into their operations.
Yeah.
Or they select a framework or multiple frameworks and try to use that to figure out with a big picture, and then find a tool that supports the frameworks they've selected to again cram it into their operations. What you described, and if I don't know how much you want to share on this, I'm happy to listen. I'm sure the audience would love to hear it as well. How you approach this from a product perspective. That doesn't say the product doesn't have a requirement to leverage a framework, to use a tool or tools, but approaching it from that perspective. I've been a product manager for decades. So those requirements, the MVP, the minimum viable product, is an important piece. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's super cool and interesting both.
Yeah. So, as you know, with product management, it's about knowing and understanding what is the outcome you're trying to achieve. There's a vision. So usually you've got a vision frame of some sort that outlines what that vision is. So I've outlined and built out a vision for cyber risk governance. What is it? What does it seek to achieve? What are the outcomes that we're looking to gain from it? And not just from the CISO perspective, but from, up to the C-level board, operational technical folks and management alike. It's about understanding what are the requirements from those. And with product, you create personas, right? And so those folks that I just described, there's a persona for them. And so now that you have that, you know what it is each one of those personas would like to get out of it. So you have conversations with board members and with folks who perform vulnerability management detection and who run and manage security technologies, because they often have to provide some level of metrics and reporting up to their management that shows how good they are at doing their job, or how strong is the security posture and all those things. And at the management level, they've got a view of what they need to see, whether it's monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, things of that nature, and what are the requirements they have that they're trying to meet. Those become requirements as part of building out this product approach. And there isn't a given product on the market today, and not a single product anyway. And we've heard for decades people talk about, or at least for the last decade and a half or two, single pane of glass. I'm not trying to create a single pane of glass. When I talk about this, it's about developing a common pane of glass, one through which each one of those personas can look at this pane of glass and get the information they need that is near real time. So that, because the threat landscape is ever evolving, the attacks morph, almost, minute by minute, and it's how quickly are we able to respond to that based on the information we have? Because that our priorities have to change based on the change in the threat landscape. And so in order to do that, you have to have information that is accurate to be able to make a decision to adjust those priorities. So it's really, as you think about product, it's the outcomes, the values, the requirements, and the personas, and to be able to deliver that. Because we were talking about, I've worked in retail, manufacturing, telecom, health insurance, health software, you name it, hospitality, retail. And yes, they all manage their business very differently. Their margins are very different, but the problem is the same across whatever the industry is. JBS Manufacturing learned that not that long ago, that nobody is safe, nobody's under the radar. They're a meat packing plant. Why would anybody want to attack them? Well, attackers don't care. It's about what can they gain by disrupting a business. And it's about them achieving their motives, and they move on to the next. But it is, how do we present the information so that folks can make consistent and accurate decisions that they can defend with? Because when we, again, whether you're subjected to the SEC governance regulations or not, you still should prepare an effective a cyber risk governance approach that achieves the same things that they're asking you to be able to present. And that is just as effective to your board as it is to your cyber insurance carrier. We achieved this year a 10% reduction in our cyber insurance premium based on the strength of our cyber risk program, how well we identify risk, how we're managing it, but just being able to demonstrate to that carrier that we know what our risk is. So don't lump us in with general financial services or insurance. We're different, and here's why.
Yeah, and I've heard many stories actually where, yes, a premium reduction, thank you, right? But also coverage increase in the policy. So you actually have better protections if something does happen, presuming that it won't, right? There's a bit of a gamble there.
Yeah, and we were able to get a premium reduction while retaining the maximum level of coverage.
Yep.
And that to me is one of those values that I can identify as, by achieving effective cyber risk governance and the supporting cyber risk management capability within it. Those are some of the things that the value that you get out of it.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about what I'm picturing this as the easy button that I think a lot of, I'm sorry if I generalize a lot here, but I talk to a lot of people. The easy button of, all right, we have a program, we put a tool together, we run these reports and generate this thing, and we make some decisions. Maybe that's possible. But what I want to get to is this idea that, and you mentioned it earlier, the CISO doesn't own this, right?
Right.
And a single pane of glass might try to put everything in a single way for everybody to view the same way.
Right.
But I believe, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, that it's not about presenting some information and giving somebody the responsibility to make a decision. I believe that there's a need to present information in different ways to all the different personas to spur a conversation so that the team, however many people it is, whomever's involved, different risks might include different folks, but that the group determines the best path forward. Because I've had some conversations this week around creating a business and building products, and you might have a great idea. You take it step 1, step 2, step 3, and then somebody says, yeah, but as soon as we reach step 4, we're off the cliff. All right, we got to back it up, right?
Right.
And yeah, that's a conversation. And if somebody makes all those decisions on their own and doesn't recognize that step 4 is the cliff, you could very well end up at step 4 and not realize it.
Well, you're spot on. Number one is that it's about getting all of the data together and aligned so that you can have a conversation and express why a one risk is greater than the other, or why it's a risk at all. Because some folks may not understand it to be a risk. They think, oh, well, you know what? From a risk standpoint, yeah, our risk is low there, so I don't really, I'm not really worried about that. The conversation does need to happen across those different levels, and it starts with a conversation. I think at the information starts the conversation at the operational technical level, and part of it is technical folks having to continue to evolve their ability to put things into business risk context, because that's where the conversation goes then with the management layer, because now you have to help that management layer understand why it's a risk, what the impact could be, and again, a decision is not being made there. So it is a bit of a bottom up approach, in that starting with the data that's at the very bottom of this, and starting to summarize that in a way that you can have the conversations as you go up the ladder, and be able to then drive that conversation. But then when you get to the top of the ladder, because we all, even at a CISO level, or even at CIO or some of those other levels, they don't make those decisions unilaterally or on their own. There's a conversation to be had with an enterprise risk management group to understand, okay, so what should the decision be based on the information that's been provided, and that's just it. It does require conversations at all three of those levels that we've talked about in order to reach that decision, because now everyone is involved in the decision. Everyone understands why that decision was made. So now if something occurs, you don't have to worry about, oh, we got to get our story together before the time expires and we have to get this to a regulator and give them what we know. Because now what you've built is a system and a capability that keeps everyone informed. So now it's everyone's in the loop at the time that something occurs, or at the time something is discovered that is of concern, so that decisions can be made. And now you don't end up with the unfortunate situation of like a SolarWinds right now. Tim Brown is a friend that lives here in the Austin area, and I've seen him around, and we all feel terrible about what's happening to him right now, and being suggested that there was fraud in some way or whatever it may be. And so now we're all at least from in the CISO circles, we're all trying to figure out, okay, hey, how do I protect myself? But we can't get caught up in a CYA type approach, because we're hired to protect the organization. And so we have to continue to press forward in those conversations to drive that decision making and inform for those decisions to be made, so that now we can all protect ourselves as best we can, and we can at least prove that we applied best effort.
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Joe Sullivan, former Uber CISO, was convicted as well, and he and I talked about icing the roll, where if you're afraid to do your job, right, or if it becomes about CYA, you're not really doing it properly, as you just described.
Right.
And it that connects to what I was thinking about earlier as well, in terms of my experience presenting to the board is presenting, yes, or even the executive leadership team. It's come in, take your 5 minutes. You have 10, but you're only going to get 5.
Right.
Show us your deck. We want to get to the last slide, because that's the one that everybody wants to see. So forget about the previous slides. And yes, there might be some conversation, but not a real discussion. Yeah. So have you seen a shift or have you seen a way that those conversations or discussions take place outside of the presentation? I'm just wondering, are we doing any better there? Given what you just described.
I think we still got a long way to go, because it is still very much a put together a deck. To your point, you get 10 minutes, but it ends up being a 7-minute conversation at best. unless you've got a board that's comprised of someone who has a specific interest in technology and cyber and really is looking to understand it. Because I think part of the concern is as CISOs, we report into another C-level. So I don't think we have the same level of accountability as the upper C-levels, but we don't have the same opportunity as the upper C-levels. And therefore it's sometimes your message gets filtered. And, so it's someone wants to, whoever you're reporting into may want to see that presentation and tweak it to what the perception of the audience is. And then, so now the message has started to be filtered. It's not the impact that you want, because the concern is you don't want to rock the boat. Well, we have to rock the boat, and we have to push for that message to be delivered unfiltered and to encourage a conversation. And the way I like to put together my presentations is to, in a way that it sparks the conversation and it creates the conversations. And I've had really great success here over the last 2.5 years here, because it's become conversations. I've had the opportunity to not just present at the audit committee, but at the full board meeting. And that turned into, lots of great conversations. And they're very interested in the roadmap and the path in terms of where I say we are in maturity today and where we're going and why we're trying to achieve that particular level. So it's about really taking hold of it and saying, to whoever it is you report into, we need to educate our board. It's not enough for us to wait for them to find someone who is educated on the matter, or to get a CISO on a board. It is to whoever is there, let's educate them. Let's not tiptoe around the subject, but let's pursue educating and teaching.
Yeah, and I think you talked about user personas. Guess what? Those personas are these people. They have a character in these stories. We didn't touch on user stories, but you have a user persona or a persona. Guess what? They're part of the story. if you can help connect their mind to, hey, I'm part of this story, you have a much better chance of having a more meaningful conversation. John, I could talk to you for hours about the whole product thing. Maybe we have another chat digging deeper into that, because I love that kind of stuff. I want to give you a moment to maybe share some thoughts on what folks can expect from you. December 6th is the Layer 8 Masters pane Cybersec CISO Forum that you're speaking at. What can folks expect to hear from you there?
Well, I will say this: they can expect to hear a very impassioned talk about cyber risk governance, but I'm not doing it to just to talk and to stand up in front of people, but I want a conversation. It's going to be a very interactive discussion. The key takeaways are really just a framework for the conversation and the types of things that I want folks to come and be prepared to participate in a discussion around. Because I certainly have my viewpoints and my thoughts, and nobody's ever accused me of being short on words, but I'm there also to be an active listener and to see what can I take away from it to be able to continue to evolve this product idea and really make it more about a revolution than an evolution. Because I think there needs to be we've been trying to get to these, a set of what do you report to the board and how do you report it and all that. And, that those topics are everywhere. That was one of the topics at AWS reInvent this week. Every conference you go to, somebody's talking about how to report to the board, how to talk to the board. Well, this is helping to, I want people to be prepared to expand that conversation, because, not everybody gets an opportunity to talk to the board, but being prepared on how to prepare information for that level, but also the other levels that you do interact with on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis.
Yeah, and I love this idea of the product. I mean, the word program is in security programs. So yes. I think generally we look at things like my brain looks like a program. I have a Gantt chart stamped in the back of my brain. But so it's easy to look at things as a program. Maybe a little out of most folks' comfort zone to look at things as a product. And I'm really intrigued by this. I'm excited to hear. Hopefully you'll be back. We can talk more about that. And I'm excited to hear what people say and take away from you when you chat with them about this in La Jolla. Yeah, it's always great, John, to catch up with you, and appreciate you thinking like this and getting people to help think differently for their own CISO role and the security programs in their organization.
Absolutely, Sean. As always, it's great talking to you. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm always available to come back and continue the conversation as this evolves.
Love it. All right, John. Well, thanks again, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. I'm pretty certain you took something fun and cool and meaningful away from this conversation. I certainly did, and we'll include links to a post that prompted this conversation, which also happens to be a link to John's presentation at the conference, and of course ways to get in touch with John there as well. So thanks everybody for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe, share with your friends and enemies, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, John.
All right, thanks, Sean. Greatly appreciate it.
Pantera, the leader in automation security validation, allows organizations to continuously test the integrity of all cybersecurity layers by emulating real-world attacks at scale to pinpoint the exploitable vulnerabilities and prioritize remediation towards business impact. Learn more at pantera.io.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Cybersecurity with Sean Martin, part of the ITSP Magazine podcast network. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share this show and itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to connect your brand with our conversations, you can sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.